Hi, everybody. It's Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. You know, the whole world somehow finds a way to fight all the time. We see war in the Middle East, on, off. But one that really has captured the world, particularly our friends in Europe, is Russia invading Ukraine. This has gone on for quite a while now, and just when we hope there might be end in sight, Vladimir Putin does something even more crazy. They keep going and going and going, pushing new offensives, and the word seems to be out that they're preparing for this summer's massive offensive. Do you find this offensive? I have that question from my good friend ForAmerica. He is Dave Bozell. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. I am disturbed as I watch this. You know, President Trump had about a 2-hour conversation with Vladimir Putin, hangs up the phone and says, well, I think ultimately he wants peace. And literally within an hour, Vladimir Putin launches a new cruel offensive against civilians in Ukraine. He's clearly not serious about peace. So what does Trump do here? What's the United States' role in all of this if you have one party that has no interest in being reasonable?
Yeah, this is the toughest of all deals, Tim, right? I mean, this is, if you look at the real clear politics, right direction, wrong track averages, President Trump is right there with a record high. In the last 16 years, the country feels like we are on the right track. So kudos to the president. But the Russia-Ukraine conflict is, potentially one of his few blemishes during Trump 2.0. Perhaps maybe that was the one thing he overpromised and has thus far under-delivered on. And I wouldn't blame him. This is the toughest of all deals. You've got Vladimir Putin, who's, obviously still engaged in a war that he started and he's trying to win. So he continues the killing. And it's offensive to President Trump trying to negotiate between Zelensky, who doesn't seem to know what he wants, or what he wants changes week to week, and Putin, who continues killing while these negotiations are ongoing, and that seems to be fairly offensive to the president. President this week said he's got that we'll see in 2 weeks. Putin, we'll see what, and he has used that 2 weeks line a couple of times now. I think it's almost 3 times in the last 2 months he's used the 2 weeks line. So it's a tough deal. I don't think anyone really knows confidently where negotiations stand at this point. I kind of harken back, Tim, to when Marco Rubio was doing a press spray, I think underneath his plane for the State Department, and he was frustrated, like, we don't have to keep doing this. I could sense the Trump administration pulling back altogether, because the last thing we want is to be in some World War III style conflict with Russia. And Putin knows it,
one of the things I'm always fascinated at studying history, even in our lifetime, recent history. And if you remember when Pope John Paul II was shot, very few people remember this detail, but ultimately the investigation tied that back to the KGB. The old Soviet Union had tried to kill this pope from Poland, which of course was unheard of at the time. There had been popes from Italy and Italy and Italy and Italy. You had the people of Poland rising up. You had the Communist Party suffering. You had all these. So it was the KGB, and that's a fact. That's not speculation. They can tie it very clearly. So I thought it was interesting now because Putin is an old KGB guy. And one of the things Trump had proposed, trying to find neutral territory in which to have negotiations, was that Ukraine and Russia and the United States meet at the Vatican. And Putin turned that down. No, absolutely not. And I thought, I think there's a little something in there. I think that was an error perhaps on our part to suggest that as the venue. But I thought from his standpoint, he doesn't want to go back there knowing the history. And who knows, Putin could have been involved. I don't know that. That part isn't fact, but could have been involved in the planning. He would have been a young KGB officer at that time. So who knows? But now they talk in terms of, okay, is Geneva the location? But I guess my bigger question is there any location that is going to be acceptable? Or is this guy just wired so differently that we can't quite get to where he is?
Yeah, there's a story trickling out of Europe today Istanbul would be a potential location that the Russians had offered Istanbul. But yeah, the Vatican offer seems to have been a little bit of an unforced error by the Trump administration, not knowing the history of what you just described. And no, I don't think Putin would have ever have accepted those terms. But this is, like I said, this is the mother of all negotiations. It's not just a war between two nations and fighting over what essentially amounts to a territory the size of Rhode Island. This is all sorts of geopolitical issues are at play here: oil, energy, etc. Europe. This has been an ongoing challenge for the Trump administration to get Europe to engage in this more forcefully, more fruitfully, and more impactfully, and they just simply have not done so. Aside from Macron essentially, skipping over there once every 6 weeks, and you can tell Macron wants to be at the forefront of this, having crashed the meeting between Trump and Zelensky in the Vatican a few weeks ago. So, there doesn't seem to be a path forward, unfortunately.
Well, and I guess that's the final question in this is, what's the right role for America to play if Putin simply says, no, I'm not interested? Should America be more involved than we are now? Should we turn and walk away from the table and say, hey, not our issue? What do we do?
I think you gotta hold ground, and this is as much as I don't really want to continue taking U.S. taxpayer money and pouring it into Ukraine in a fruitless effort. But if we are in the life-saving business, I think we need to remain committed to saving lives. And to the extent that our resources can preserve life in Ukraine, I think we need to continue to do this. And because if the moment we walk away, Putin will just steamroll in there, and that causes all sorts of other calamities for other nations. And so I think it's imperative that we just stay exactly right where we are until, and hopefully wear Putin out.
This one does not look like it's going to be solved in the immediate future, but we sure hope it is. A lot of people being killed, hurt, just horrible situation. So, for America, he is Dave Moselle. I'm Tim Constantine. Thank you as always. See you soon, Dave.